Good evening, everyone. My name is Caroline Jean Fernald. I'm the Executive Director of the Harvard Museums of Science and Culture, where our mission is to foster curiosity and a spirit of discovery in visitors of all ages, enhancing public understanding of and appreciation for the natural world, science, and human cultures. With this mission in mind, I am delighted to welcome our in-person as well as our Zoom audience to tonight's lecture, co-sponsored by the Harvard Museum of Natural History, the Harvard Museums of Science and Culture, and the Harvard Radcliffe Institute. We are honored to have Hrdy Biju, professor in the Department of Environmental Studies at the University of Delhi, with us tonight to discuss his research on the frogs of India and Asia. After the lecture, we invite you to visit the Harvard Museum of Natural History, where you can see an exhibition of Professor Biju's frog photographs, and they are beautiful. And also participate in Arts Thursdays, a free event happening in our galleries from 5 to 9 p.m. Colleagues from the Museum of Comparative Zoology will be showcasing specimens of various amphibians, and we will have a fun photo booth featuring frog backgrounds. This is a very important detail. Our staff and volunteers will direct to the galleries after the program. I will now turn it over to Jim Henkin, Curator of Herpetology, Professor of Biology, and Alexander Agassi, Professor of Zoology in the Museum of Comparative Zoology, who will introduce our speaker.
Thank you, Caroline. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for coming. In 2003, the international science journal Nature published an article featured on its cover that was described as a, quote, once-in-a-century find. The article reported discovery of a new species of odd-looking frog from the poorly studied Western Ghats region of southern India, one of the world's then recognized biodiversity hotspots. Based on genetic data, the species lineage had diverged from all other living frogs more than 130 million years ago, and its presence in southern India overturned decades of understanding of Southeast Asian biogeography. The lead author of that study was a young Indian man, then a graduate student at the Free University of Brussels in Belgium, who was completing his second doctoral degree in animal science, having previously completed a PhD in systematic botany. From Belgium, this young man returned to India to assume a faculty position at the University of Delhi, where he has spent the subsequent 21 years documenting the diversity and evolutionary history of Indian amphibians. Along the way, he, his students, and other collaborators have discovered and described more than 100 new species, 10 new genera, and 2 new families. His accomplishments have earned him election to the Indian National Science Academy, the nicknames Frogman of India and Patron Saint of Amphibians, among others, and an appearance on the Stephen Colbert Show. This work has shown the Indian subcontinent to be among the most hyper-diverse regions of the world, perhaps second only to Brazil when it comes to amphibians. At the same time, it has revealed the plight of many Indian species that are in decline, if not extinct, while at the same time providing essential information for conservation measures needed to save them. The man's name is Sathyabhama Das Biju, and he is our speaker tonight. Biju has spent the current academic year, as Carolyn just mentioned, at Harvard as a Hrdy Radcliffe Fellow, where he is based both at Radcliffe and in the Museum of Comparative Zoology, where we are collaborating on research projects together with Biju's former PhD student, Sonali Garg, who is an MCZ Biodiversity postdoctoral fellow. I believe that Biju will be talking about some of that work this evening. And I want to say, Biju, it has been a pleasure to have you here this year, and especially to conduct field work with you in India these past 2 summers. As Carolyn mentioned, or implied, Biju, on top of his scientific accomplishments, or more correctly, in support of them, is an outstanding nature photographer, and I invite you to view a small sample of his images in the HM&H lobby after tonight's talk. Biju, please.
Thank you, James, for a very nice and kind introduction about me and my work. Thank you to Harvard Museum of Natural History for giving a wonderful opportunity today to stand in front of a very important gathering like this, that also talking about Indian frogs. That is very exciting for me. That is really exciting for me. And good evening, everyone, and thank you all for coming and joining for today's frog talk. I'm not talking anything other than frogs. I'm talking for frogs and talking about only frogs. And okay, before I start, let me talk something based on my professional journey in the beginning. I can say I'm an accidental amphibian biologist. I started my professional career as an amphibian biologist very late in my career, late in my life. I can say when I was approximately 40-year-old. And I started my professional journey as a plant scientist after obtaining my first PhD from India. One of my several fieldworks, we normally do so many fieldworks in the Western Ghats, and I stumbled upon several frogs in my life. I completely, I can say I fell in love with them. I transformed from plant scientist to animal scientist. I moved to Belgium for obtaining my another degree and returned back to India and joined at Delhi University in 2005 as a full-time faculty. Thereafter, I am doing only amphibian research for the last 3 decades. I've been working in this area for more than 3 decades for in search of frogs. And my work largely focused on discovering different life forms in India and surrounding regions and their evolutionary relationship and biogeographic affinities. And of course, it includes behaviors. I use multiple parameters to understand the biodiversity of Indian amphibians based on external and internal morphology, anatomy, DNA, bioacoustics for frogs, and larval studies, and so many other things, including evolution and biogeography for understanding the relationship. So far, our team discovered 120 new taxa from India and surrounding regions. This includes 100 new species and more than 10 new genera and 2 entirely new family from South and Southeast Asia. This work is still on, and hopefully we may be able to do something more. The work which I'm presenting today is not my work alone. This is the efforts, knowledge, and resources from my past and present students, and of course, including my collaborators from many parts of the world. And I also received a lot of support from other institutions for my academic and at the same time financial support for conducting field work in the various parts of India for searching frogs. I cannot keep this last slide in the end of the slide because I am using largely my pictures to support my talk today. But at the same time, I received tremendous, exciting pictures from my colleagues, friends, so that also I greatly acknowledge. So today, I am keeping my talk is very easy for you. I am not using any technical jargons or terminology to explain about my findings or my research. So whenever, sometimes I also define some of the frequently used terms somewhere on the bottom of the slides so you can see and understand what exactly it is. Coming back to the frogs. Frogs are amazing. The frogs are the part of wonderful mystery called life. Life is everywhere. Life is absolutely brilliant, no doubt about that. Earth evolved several millions of years after the evolution, and currently we have several species in the world. And It includes several life forms. Life is from microscopic bacteria to the giant mammals, shape, size, structure. Everything is very great and fantastic. But the question is, that's a very big question I had to ask every time in my life. How much do we know about our Earth life forms? Scientists estimated approximately 1.7 million species from all over the world. It includes air, water, and land, right from the microscopic bacteria to the giant mammals. But this 1.7 million species is not real. Actually, scientists estimated, or scientists believe, minimum 10 million or even up to 50 million is the real. Then the question again, how much do we know about our Earth biodiversity? The answer is only 10%, and remaining 90% of our life forms are so far not discovered or even documented. So the point is, the discovery of species is extremely important for understanding our Earth biodiversity. So coming back to my fascinating country, India. India is one of the major mega diversity center, or we can say one of the mega diverse region in the world. India occupies only less than 2.4% of the total land area. Minimum 7 or even up to 8% of the total plant species and animal species are from that particular region. So then look at one of the major reason is India is unique geological history. That played an important role to give rise the present day amazing diversity what we are seeing today. I am not explaining all the historic events right from the Triassic to the late Cretaceous of several millions of years of evolution. But what I want to emphasize today, India was also the part of the supercontinent Gondwana, together with the present-day countries like Antarctica, Africa, Australia, and South America. And India finally detached from Africa, and before joining with Asia, and that time was extremely crucial and critical for origin and dispersal of many life forms what we are seeing today. India is an amazing country, as I said earlier. It has 4 major biodiversity hotspots. One is the world famous Western Ghats, another is Himalaya, Indo-Burma, and Sundaland. I briefly plan to explain a brief introduction about this region that become very easy to understand what I'm talking after that. The Western Ghats is one of the major biodiversity hotspots with a global importance and extremely diverse in terms of species richness and endemism. And UNESCO in 2012 declared this region as one of the UNESCO World Heritage Site. The second biodiversity hotspot, so I missed to inform one thing. These areas are not only rich in plants and animals. This area is also more than 100 indigenous communities living harmoniously with the Western Ghats. That's an important point. This region is not only for plants and animals. This is me, along with my tribal, and maybe I can say my friends, who taught me how to navigate and how to walk in the jungle in the night for searching frogs. Whatever the things I'm doing, because of the people like almost everywhere in the Western Ghats or maybe in the other parts of the. Okay, so coming back to the Himalaya. Himalaya, another major biodiversity hotspot. India is also having very important, share from there. That is Himachal Pradesh, Uttarakhand, and sometimes in the Arunachal Pradesh also. This is an ice-covered Himalayan mountain range. Is as well known about all over the world. But this is an important biodiversity hotspot for large mammals. And again, this area is also with amazing tribal communities living very harmoniously with nature. The third biodiversity hotspot India is also belongs to that is Indo-Burma. The northeastern part, along with Myanmar, Laos, Cambodia, and Thailand, and some part of Vietnam is also the part of the Indo-Burma biodiversity hotspot. It is almost like Western Ghats. We can see the extreme diverse life forms in the different terrains. And also, of course, this is also the part of the Andaman Islands. Currently, we are largely focusing on this area to study the amphibians. The last and the fourth biodiversity hotspot we have in India is Sundaland. Sundaland, we have only a tiny, small portion of India that is in the Bay of Bengal in Indian Ocean, that is Nicobar Islands. Nicobar Island is extremely close to the Indonesian archipelago. You can see less than 125 kilometers. There's a distance in between Sumatra and the northern tip of Nicobar group of islands. This island is the peculiarity of this island. You can see the tropical wet evergreen forest right from the sea level, few meters away from the seashore. And also, the most isolated tribes in the world are living in this particular island, is Nicobar. That is, they're called as Sentinels. I hope you heard about that. North Sentinel Island is one of the remotest islands in the entire world, and I don't want to go into the details of that, and you can ask some questions, then we will see that. Of course, India is great, no doubt about that in terms of species richness, endemism. Sometimes we are talking too much about this region. We are always attributing new names for India like mega diversity center and greatness of the India. But in fact, the question is, how much do we know about India's biodiversity? Sadly, our knowledge is very poor, and the information related to the biodiversity is so incomplete. More and more new species are being discovered, and any other history in the discovery and description of species from India. That is not very microscopic organisms like small invertebrates, or I'm sorry to say something like that. But it is look at the birds and mammals, and many larger forms of life is discovering from India. So that means, according to my estimation and my calculation, at least 40% of India's biodiversity is not properly documented. I think it is extremely difficult to believe, but that is the thing. So then we know the question and we know the answer too. When we talk about wildlife or nature or animal, at least in my part of the world, we ignore everything in front of these three animals. That is tiger, elephants, or one-horned rhinos. India is the land of tiger, elephants. I'm not against elephant, or I really love them very much, and no need to brand me like an anti-tiger or anti-elephant. I like them very much, but unfortunately, our list of wildlife is ending somewhere there. Below that, rhinos, there is no wildlife. Maybe not like in US, in many other parts, especially in the Asian region, the wildlife is ending maximum up to birds. And the lower forms of life, they normally ignore. And most people, their familiarity, in my knowledge, is simply from the fairy tales or maybe some mandatory dissection. That is the knowledge about frogs. Now the situation is slightly changing in India, I believe. More and more people start talking about Indian frogs. This frog we recently described as a new species from the Western Ghats. It's a lucky frog. In fact, this frog had an opportunity sit in front of the cover page of the world foremost economist magazine, The Economist. That is not only sitting there, sitting with a golden crown on his head. That is the most important thing for me. I think I'm so glad and happy. My photograph, that's a different issue, but Indian frog is sitting in front of the world foremost economist magazine cover story and sitting with a crown on his head. That is amazing. And I think why frogs? Because the story of life on land is also the story of frogs. Why? The frogs evolved, the ancestors of present-day frogs evolved approximately 350 million years ago from water to the land and colonized the land and lived along with the dinosaurs and other mighty animals like saber-toothed lions and woolly mammoth, and also witnessed the mass extinction of all these animals. And frogs are still with us. Currently, all over the world, we have 8,740 described species in 3 major groups. The first is, you can see here is snake-like, very secretive salamanders, and then we know that reptile, lizard-like salamander, and worm-like or snake-like caecilians, and very familiar. Okay, what I want to say in terms of species number, amphibians are the 3rd largest group of land vertebrates. But still, we believe amphibians are not very important. We still believe that amphibians are tiny, small creatures living in dirty puddles. I believe so. So I think that is not true. Look at this. Fairy tales also portray frogs as ugly. And that is not true. The frogs are extremely beautiful, and compared to any other forms of life in the world, amphibians are extremely brilliant in terms of color, in terms of behavior, in terms of shape and structure together. Look at these dazzling colors and dazzling shapes. Frogs are literally amazing, right? I believe so. Then sometimes you tend to believe, of course, there are some frogs in the remote part of Amazon forest in South America. Again, coming back to India or somewhere in the tropical part of Asia is again gray or brown frogs. That is not true. Indian frogs are much more colorful than any other frogs in the world, I believe. I hope it is slightly exaggerating, right? I hope so. But honestly, I believe he's right. Have you seen this frog? It is amazing, right? It is from the Western Ghats. It's a recently described new species. And look at this. Extremely beautiful eyes, right? And look at this. Amazing, right? It is not a painting. It is a frog. And look at this. And look at this. Look at the eyes. And look at this. I think I don't want to talk. The frog itself is, communicating very properly. Okay, I don't have time, and my allotted time is really. So coming back to the science. And currently we have 454 described species of amphibians from India in the 3 major orders, salamanders, caecilians, and frogs. But unfortunately, we have only 2 species of salamander and 41 species of caecilians. Is very secretive, but we have 41 species, and 91% of our amphibian diversity belongs to frogs. So no need to think, because we are sitting in a place having salamander is having a dominant population. Okay, coming back to the Indian diversity, if you are looking at the dispersal and the concentration of different group of animals, you can see the 2 centers. One is peninsular part of India, another is the northeastern India. These are the 2 centers within the country having the maximum number of species and endemism. Look at the different levels of endemism and different distribution pattern and everything, all the numbers and figures we can see here. And only one point I had to highlight, the endemism in this part of the country is approximately 93% of the amphibians are nowhere else in the world, only found in that particular region. But in northeastern part of India, only 34%, and remaining part of India is less than 93 species. And the total endemism in India is approximately 70%. So this is an overview of Indian amphibians in the 16 described families. So time is not permitting to discuss anything more about this particular portion of my discussion. So I want to come to one of the very important statement I had to make, very bold. The India is the only country in the world is having maximum number of endemic families. I think 4 endemic families plus 3 endemic subfamilies. The first endemic family is Nasica batrachidae, that is Indian purple frog. Currently, we have 2 described species from Western Ghats. And fortunately, our lab described another family from Northeast India, that is Cichlidae. 4 species belongs to this, is endemic to northeastern part of India. Is again Western Ghat, Ranic-Salidae. This is a very interesting frog. You can see the frog is dancing and maybe food flagging. I will come to that point later in my discussion. This is an Indian dancing frog. This is endemic to the Western Ghats. Another endemic subfamily, Indian night frog, Nyctiobatrachinae. It is a small, tiny animal, but extremely beautiful and known only from a small region of Western Ghats. And this is another very interesting subfamily from endemic to the Western Ghats, and we don't know anything about this frog. It's more than 175 years after the discovery of this species. We don't know much about that other than a patchy distribution pattern of this frog. This frog is extremely beautiful and amazing. So in fact, I want to talk so many things about Indian frogs, but time is not permitting. And before concluding this discussion, the particular part, I want to say one thing very clearly. Many frogs in India is also without names. Look at this beautiful frog from India. Currently no name for this frog. Probably it can be a new species. Look at this amazing frog with a very, very strange nose. Again, maybe you can see some South America. I know that in Papua there is a species like that, but the species is extremely unique, and you can see that it is not, so far not scientifically documented or even described. And another suspected new species from the northeastern part of India. So I want to talk on and on about the greatness of my country and saying so many big stories about frogs, and frogs are great and nothing other than that. But I don't have that much time, so I'm planning to select some exciting frogs for you today. I'm planning to make some stories related to the Indian frogs. They're starting with a very well-known the story of Indian purple frog. The story of Indian purple frog is extremely exciting for me because of two reasons. Okay, I can come to that maybe later. This is the Indian purple frog. For many, it does not look like a frog. It is almost like a ball or a bloated balloon with a very tiny head with a very long pointed nose and two lateral small tiny eyes. Look at this. This is not a frog for many people. And I'm not saying anything. Though I fortunately discovered this frog in 2000, I formally described as a new family in 2003 along with my PhD supervisor, Frankie Bosith. This discovery received a lot of attention across the world, not simply because of a new family, but also because of its unique evolutionary history and biogeographic relationship. And scientists maybe made a lot of comments and remarks about this publication. They made a once-in-a-century find. So I'm fortunate to be the author of that paper. And as I said earlier, we found that the closest relative of Indian purple frog found approximately 5,600 kilometers away from Western Ghats and Seychelles Islands. That makes this frog much more unique. As I mentioned earlier, India was also the part of supercontinent Gondwana land. Indian plate separated from Africa, first then Madagascar, and finally completely detached from Seychelles approximately 65 million years ago. This timing of separation coincided with the divergence time of purple frog and its relatives, and this provided additional evidence of India's connection with Africa and many other related things. So that was the reason this frog is special for scientists. Look at this frog. It is really, I cannot say it's a weird looking. It's a very beautiful animal, right? Look at like a balloon on somewhere on the somewhere. Okay, this is a female, and male is much smaller than the females, almost 2 times smaller than females, and the closest relative of Nasica batrachus approximately 5,300 kilometers away from Seychelles. That is less than 9 or even maximum up to 23 millimeter. That is the size. So I really want to talk something more about this female, weird-looking female. You know what is there inside this full of eggs? Actually, we use a CT scan, and you can see the CT scan what is inside. You can see this, both the side is nothing other than sack full of eggs. White, unpigmented, more than 2,000 eggs are there in a gravid female. And probably you can see both male and female in a CT scan video. For me, the most exciting things for this frog is nothing other than its reproductive behavior and lifestyle. That is extremely unique compared to any other frogs across the world. This frog lives under the soil, deep under the soil, even up to 20 feet. They're coming out for maximum 2 days, minimum 1 day or maximum 2 days, only for two purposes. That is for mating and laying eggs. And again, going back to the dark depth of the soil within 2 days' time and wait for the next year to come again for 2 days and doing the same thing and going back to the soil. And that is exciting, that is amazing for me and for everyone, I believe. And look at the male frogs. At the beginning of the breeding season, males started usually cold deep under the soil before they come out for mating. For me, the call is almost look like a chicken. It is like almost like that of a chicken. Listen the call and decide whether it is a chicken or not. After female start mating with the male and making amplexes, then female starts searching for a suitable place for laying eggs. Sometimes she carry male on her back and move something like a vertical cliff against the fast-flowing streams. That is amazing. That time, okay, so there are a lot of things. Okay, the tadpoles also. This is the tadpole of Nasica batrachus. You can see an oral sucker somewhere here. This enables these frogs to cling on the rock surfaces in fast-flowing streams. This is again one of the, according to me, is one of the biggest tadpole in this particular part of the world. And again, within maximum 20 days, 29 days maximum, then you can see the froglet somewhere there. And again, this baby frog is also going back to the deep soil along with their. Then another family we discovered is Cichlidae. Cichlidae is from northeastern part of India along with my PhD student, and this also have some sort of similarity with the Nasica batrachus because this is also slightly fossorial. This also slightly live under the soil even up to 2 feet in the humid soil, and recently discovered 4 more new species from that. Then another next animal is Indian dancing frog. Indian dancing frog is extremely unique because of its behavior. This is a very special frog in the Western Ghats. We described 14 new species of dancing frog from the Indian Western Ghats. This frog is normally, we can find somewhere in the fast-flowing stream beds, and maybe in the rocky terrain in the deep, maybe largely in the evergreen forest. And this frog is having a very unique behavior that is known as foot flagging behavior. I call this as a dance for attracting female for mating. The male are only doing this dance in front of you can watch the video.
Scientists call this foot flagging behavior, and others with probably more romance in their hearts choose to see this as a dance. The background melody of echoing frog calls and flowing stream completes the effect. This fascinating display has earned these frogs the name Indian dancing frogs.
Okay, again, what I want to say, this is the tadpole also, very peculiar tadpole you can see here. The tadpole is always fossorial. The female lay eggs under the soil, and maybe you can watch a video and see that the way she is excavating a small tunnel inside the soil and deposit her eggs and again cover with her hind limb.
Female chooses a male and permits him to climb on her back. Till the eggs are laid and fertilized, the male does not leave this position. He becomes a backpack to the female. The mating pair enters shallow water. Now, female feet come into play. With the hind limbs, she digs out a cavity in the stream bed, where she lays her eggs and then covers them with soil and gravel. This cover prevents eggs from being washed away in flowing water and protects them till they hatch.
This is a very tiny frog. It is not a big size frog. It is maximum only this much size. Okay, tadpoles. Again, what I want to say is look at the tadpoles of that particular species. It is almost look like an eel because this is fossorial. The internal anatomy and external morphology is largely adapted for living deep inside the soil. So I want to show how we, sort of find these live frogs under the soil. Look at it's a small video. It is not a long one. That's all. This is the fossorial tadpole of the Indian dancing frog. This is another group of frogs we have in India. Is known as night frog. The genus name is Nyctibatrachus. The species name is Nyctibatrachus humayuni. We discovered a new sex position in amphibians. I can say mating position. Amblexus position or mating position in frogs are extremely important for successful external fertilization of their eggs. Until 2016, only 6 mating positions were known to science among 4,500 described species across the world. We described a new sex position or amblexus position in frogs, and we described as a dorsal straddle. Dorsal straddle differs from all other mating or mating position in all the known frogs because the male does not hold the female with his forelimb at the time of amblexus. And very interestingly, the female lay eggs without a male on her back. That is extremely rare in frogs. Only, according to my knowledge, is probably the 3rd species in the world. This is also an extremely rare thing, absolutely. And we also used different methods to understand how the dorsal straddle is happening and how the egg is fertilizing. Just watch the video and find the reason why she is laying eggs without a male on her back.
Dorsal straddle differs from the other 6 modes of amplexus because male frog loosely sits on the female's back without grasping her. He holds or rests his hand on the substrate that could be a leaf, branch or tree trunk. Soon the female is ready to lay eggs. At the end of the embrace, she strongly and repeatedly arches her back, signaling the male to dismount. She immediately lays her eggs in a single bout within 3 to 4 seconds without any physical contact with her partner at the time of egg laying.
I think it is a remarkable ability of a female is laying eggs without a partner, and this is very exciting. And another discovery is the accidental discovery of a new genus of frog from the roadside puddles. And we tend to believe that we have to go to the remotest forest for finding some exciting discoveries, but not always, not essential. Sometimes we will get the discovery even from a roadside puddle. And we first found a tadpole. And after several years of wait, and of course, we identified the tadpole by using DNA, and we found out that it is an entirely different genus or family or something like this. Then after several years, the 3rd year, we found some couple of animals and formally described it as a new genus and a species. Unfortunately, this animal is currently critically endangered, and recently the entire area from where we discovered this frog is completely modified or destroyed due to the construction of a building. Currently, this frog is critically endangered according to the IUCN Red List assessment. My talk will not be complete without talking about the largest Indian radiation, that is Indian tree frogs. Indian tree frogs are one of the most fascinating group of animals. We can call this animal as tree frogs. Look at the beauty of these frogs, and they really call very, very beautifully and attract the females. especially in the night time. If you are in the jungle, you can listen some of the melodious music of the male. Male calling time, you can see the gular pouch or the sac-like structure is more than 4 or even 5 times bigger than the size of the head. They also produce extremely beautiful music. Let us listen some of the very unique call, and we can identify almost all the frog species by its call like birds. Really, you can see, you can listen some of the calls like this. This is 2 different species. Okay. Then look at this, the group of animals is having an extraordinary and extremely beautiful eyes with the different colors and extremely beautiful pattern. I don't want to continue to talk something. It is like a fluorescent, especially in the nighttime, which is very exciting to see that. And look at the different developmental modes in tree frogs. You can see on the other side, the tadpole, without tadpoles, the complete development happening inside the eggshell and coming out something like this. And I'm not okay, the other side is an intermediate larval form. Actually, this is the frog is usually we are seeing everywhere. And the last part of my talk today is to discuss something about the unique amphibian species in India. This Rhacophorus lateralis make nest by using her hind limb, by folding the leaf and covering the eggs. And okay, I don't have much time, and I want to quickly show some of the most secretive amphibians we have in India, that is caecilians. The world of caecilians are extremely exciting. At the same time, we don't have much information about these animals. Look at the mother is coiled around her eggs. She spent several days, even without food, without much movement, until her babies are coming out from the eggshell. That is very amazing. Unlike frogs, caecilians have internal fertilization, and the male have internal copulatory organ known as phallus. This is the 2 different genera. This is the phallus of 2 different genera. And the eggs are also deposited under the soil. Sometimes they look like a bunch of grape, like this. And the eggs are also developed partially inside the eggshell and coming out as a baby caecilian. So far, so good. Everything is very colorful and very exciting. So let me come to the last part of my talk today. That is not that much great. So far, I hope I briefly explained the overview of these amazing frogs in India, and also how scientists are discovering their wonderful diversity. But sadly, our frogs are extinct, or maybe pushing towards the extinction of 41% of Indian world amphibians are now in the verge of extinction simply because of so many reasons. Amphibians are the most threatened vertebrate group in the world. And maybe I can say at least 37 species are already extinct from the wild within a short period of time, less than 100 years. Almost half of all known amphibians are declining. 2 out of 5 species are threatened with extinction. These are not just alarming statements. These are the facts and findings of recent IUCN Global Amphibian Assessment, and based on that, more than 41% of our world amphibians are in the verge of extinction. This is an overview of Indian amphibians and its threatened categories. I am not planning to discuss each and every 60 families and discussing one by one. What I want to say that 40% of Indian amphibians are in the verge of extinction simply because of 5 reasons. And before talking about the reason, I want to show one of the very interesting group of animals in Western Ghats, that is Micrixalidae, the most threatened frog genera in the world, having almost all the species in this genus either endangered, critically endangered, or vulnerable, according to the IUCN categorization. That is not a good news. Look at the comparison between 2004 versus 2023 Global Amphibian Assessment, that is IUCN assessment based on the entire amphibian species of the world. You can compare and you can see almost all the stages in 2004 and 2003, you can see there is not much difference, slight increase in the critically endangered and endangered and vulnerable species in that particular assessment in 2023. So what are the causes behind this alarming rate of amphibian decline across the world? If you look at the reason both in India and the world, you can see the reason behind that. More than 93% of the global amphibians are extinct from, pushing towards the extinction simply because of habitat loss. And the second is climate change and associated concerns. And the third one is disease. But coming to India, you can see more than 99% of Indian amphibians are pushing towards the extinction simply because of habitat loss. 22% of amphibian in India is because of climate change and associated impact. And fortunately and luckily, so far, disease is not a major threat for us. And the reason, if you're looking very closely, it is not because of any other things, it's because of you and me is the sole responsible people for pushing this amphibian towards the extinction. Look at this. This is from Western Ghats. It's one of the global biodiversity hotspot. It is a recent picture. You can see that the amount of destruction is happening, even a biodiversity hotspot like this. 99% of India's amphibians are pushing towards the extinction simply because of habitat loss. The habitat loss including fragmentation and modification of land for other agricultural activities. But the question is remain, how can we halt this alarming rate of amphibian decline across the world and particularly in India? We know the answers and we know the question and we know the answers. But why we have the rules and we have regulations how to conserve a species, but while we prioritizing conservation, we always ignore amphibians in front of so-called big and charismatic animals. That is not simply because of lack of knowledge or lack of understanding about these animals. That is simply because of lack of awareness. I believe we are not giving enough importance for their presence in our ecosystem. So apart from scientific research over the years, we have also made an effort to popularize amphibian, and through which we try to conserve amphibians of India by using a new initiative we launched under the leadership of Delhi University called the Lost Amphibians of India. Abbreviation is LAI, L-A-I. And we have also created a platform to bring together various stakeholders from the different sector of society, including scientists, ministers from the state and the central government, and bureaucrats, and volunteers from the general public. We received a tremendous support from almost all the walk of life. We made a special training, special workshops, and group meetings, and more than 550 expeditions along with this team. So they are getting more and more education based on the information about these amphibians. But the real strength of any conservation movement and conservation activities has to be implemented through only the involvement of civil society and political will. Unfortunately, we got tremendous support from I hope in India, the sports means cricket. We received the former Indian captain Anil Kumble's support for this initiative and spread the message for how to conserve and why we have to conserve the amphibians. Both the central and state ministers also involved. And finally, the government of Kerala and the University of Delhi made a sort of a tie-up for conservation of amphibians in the state of Kerala. We made a special effort along with different forest managers in the southern Western Ghats, especially the state of Kerala, Tamil Nadu, and Karnataka. And now we are now listening with them, and we are now started new programs and new initiative for conserving the amazing animals from the land of India. At the end of the things, we need media. We received tremendous support from the national and international media for propagating the information about the amphibian decline in India. One of the prime time news in CNN is carried the news about the lost amphibians, launched the program. Without our timely action to conserve this frog, this could be a scenario in near future. Our future generation may see the frogs only in photographs or in the museum exhibition along with the extinct animals. That's the worry. The chorus of frog is a symbol of drama of life on earth. The chorus will continue to resonate on our planet, so that we have to work together to discover unknown and preserve them all. That's my wish. I hope that's the wish of everyone. Thank you.